Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. It's nighttime where I am. I want to welcome you to the Love Your Vibe podcast. I'm your host, Reverend Sean Robert Grant. So I got a bit of a story to tell you here that I will in just a bit, because you may be thinking, well, I thought I was listening to the Heart of Christ Ministry podcast, but you just said Love Your Vibe. So we're going to get into that in just a bit. First things first, welcome. Got a great show planned for you today, as always, and excited. I'm very excited to get into our topic of choice today. First things first, been away for a long time, and now I'm back. You guys may have heard me on the other podcasts we have going as well, but happy to be back with Love Your Vibe here after some time away, and it feels amazing. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your love. Thank you for everything you bring to this podcast, and more importantly, just listening in. And I want to welcome our listeners from India. We are now streaming in India now, and everywhere around the world. It's just such a beautiful thing to know that we can reach people light years, it seems, away from where I am in the state of Florida in the United States. So I'm really happy about that. So guys, if you have any questions, anything you want insight on, feel free to ask me. I'm an open book here, and I'm willing to help you in any way that I can. My email is shaung04@gmail.com, and feel free to email me at any point in time. I'm here for you. Happy to be so, and happy to get rolling. So I'm your host, Reverend Sean Robert Grant, and I want to share with you why this podcast went from, well, Love Your Vibe started out as to Heart of Christ Ministry, back to Love Your Vibe. Okay, so quick story before we get into our topic. I developed a ministry called Heart of Christ in, I want to say 2020. Matter of fact, during the pandemic. And it was something, it still is something that is really near and dear to my heart. And it's amazing. And I cranked out so many different creative aspects of it, as well as built a closer relationship to the divine. And there was so much wonderful stuff going on with it that I decided to change the name of this podcast to Heart of Christ Ministry. But then I realized something. Although ministry means different things to different people, it can also be very limiting in a sense when people come to listen to what it is that you have to say. Now, what I mean by that, some people see ministry and they're immediately charged up as if it's something overly religious or, condemning their type of belief. So what winds up happening, they just pass on it, right? So anyway, that's just one of the instances. But after, some really deep meditative time and some prayer, I realized that, I don't want it to be limited. I want everyone, not just a certain group of people, but everyone to feel like they can click on this podcast, whether it's on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, all these outlets that we have now. I want them to feel like they can click on it and listen and feel invited and feel inclusive. That's the main thing with anything that you do. You really want people to feel like they can be a part of it. And that's the reason why I changed it back, because Love Your Vibe is really about loving your vibration, loving who you are, loving the divinity within yourself. And Heart of Christ encompasses that too, but the name itself can sometimes drive people away. So I just wanted to give you some backstory on that. Let's get into today's message, ladies and gents. We are a human being, not a human doing. Right. And so I did a video on this on my Instagram, and immediately I thought to myself, you know what? I want to expand on this. I want to extrapolate why we are called human beings and not human doings. OK, so first things first, human beings. Right. Being, the term being means what? Means to be. Means to exist, means just is, right? And that in itself tells us right then and there what we're here to do for the most part, right? You ever wondered why meditation is so pivotal if we are to embody a deeper connection with the divine, with God, with the all that is. Because meditation in itself is all about being. And when we're being, we can tap into what is, and what is God in a nutshell, right? So it was interesting because I was just going about my day, and I've been really diving more into my meditative practice to just, gain a greater sense of awareness and connection to the God within. And this just kind of hit me right on the head with the revelation of it all. And I thought to myself, okay, somewhere along the line, someone called us a human being. They didn't call us a human doing. Someone who had an elevated awareness, a higher consciousness, knew that human beings was the very term that we were going to be defined by. And so I began to think deeper about it. And I thought to myself, there's something to this, right? If this is what we're called, if this is what everybody agrees to us being called, that should mean that the majority of our lives should be spent in being, not in doing. Okay? Go down the rabbit hole for a bit. You ever notice how when you do way too much, like whether it's mental, emotional, physical, sometimes even spiritual, if you can do spiritual, because spirituality is really all about being and accepting and being aware. But you ever notice when you really overdo it, you can cause so many problems for yourself, starting with a lack of energy, starting with physical ailments. I've seen so many people who would look like successes from the outside. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to come out and say it. Jamie Foxx, right? I had the pleasure of working with Jamie Foxx on the set of Ray one time. I didn't get a chance to really know him, but I worked with him and stuff like that. But, Jamie Foxx just had that stroke. And you look at it from the outside looking in and you think, wow, it must be great to be Jamie Foxx, until you find out, oh my God, it must be hell to be Jamie Foxx, to continually do, and not be, and not exist, and not just be aware, right? And to be still the majority of the time, as opposed to just working countless hours throughout the day, right? And that's an issue that we kind of have to, I want to say, rectify a bit. Or no, let's not even go down that route. We need to transcend this. We need to stop looking at the idea of, because somebody's made a lot of money, because someone is famous, all of a sudden they've got it figured out. If anything, it's probably the other way around, right? Because the reality is, unless you're taking the time to sit with the God in you, unless you're taking the time to connect to your divinity, unless you are taking the time to relax into the pure essence of all that is, you're going to struggle. And you're going to struggle mentally, you're going to struggle emotionally, you're going to struggle physically, because we're human beings, not human doings. We were not created, we were not meant to do all the time. And when we do that, we step completely out of resonance and alignment with what we're truly here to do, or should I say, to be, right? So hopefully you're following along with me. In my own life, I've had to get to a place where I realize, you know what? At one point in time, I really thought I wanted to work, as Rihanna says, right? And just do that repetitively over and over and over again until I worked so hard, I found myself rolling on an ambulance, right? Being in the bed of an ambulance, rolling away from the job that I was working at. And the reality is too much doing causes way too much stress. And stress poisons the body, right? And when there's stress, when there's too much stress, that's when you get sickness. That's when you get illness and ailments and all these things, right? It becomes too much for the body to handle. So the body has to let you know, look, this ain't gonna work. You got to stop this. You got to really like let this go, because you're doing too much. You ever hear that term? That term is say, okay, you are doing too much. You are but you're doing too much. That means that it's like you're going above and beyond the balance of what you need to do, right? You'd be surprised in life when you begin to dive in and deal with your emotions, and you begin to find out how much less you can do for your life, for yourself, to be fulfilled, to be successful, to be happy, right? You find, here's what's interesting. Most of us work 8 to 10, sometimes more hours per day. And we meditate 0, right? Or sometimes we'll meditate like a couple minutes. Now, I want to tell you something, and I'm not saying you got to meditate 8 hours a day, but what if you meditated 1 to 2 hours a day, and then maybe cut down work to like 3 or 4 hours, right? Or, I mean, if you really wanted to go extreme, if you had the time to do it, why not work, tongue-tied, why not work 8 hours a day and meditate 8 hours a day and work 1 hour a day? I guarantee you, in that 1 hour, you would get so much done, because 8 hours of tapping into the highest, most potent, omnipotent awareness within you would pay enormous dividends, right? So my challenge is to you guys is to spend more time meditating. Spend more time just sitting and not mentally going over stuff and forcing stuff as you close your eyes, but just sitting with the presence of God and allowing it to come into your life, to come in through you, and allow you to just be and just experience that. I promise you, your life will get to be so much greater, in a sense that it'll be more fulfilled, in a sense that you'll find you won't want as much from the outside as you think you do. You see, the issue comes up when we think that the things that are outside of us can fulfill us, but the reality is the only thing that can fulfill us is the God within. The only thing that can fulfill us is the spirit that lives within us, that lives within our being. And the more time we spend with that spirit, with that essence, the more fulfilled we are, right? So I encourage you to become more of a human being. Be more of a human being, right? If you possibly can, in any way, shape, or form, right? And I know a lot of you guys may have what we call regular jobs, 9-to-5 jobs, and that's okay. So you know what? Add 30 minutes, add another 30 minutes, add another 10 minutes, add another hour if you can to your meditation practice. You know, when I used to work at 5 a.m., I would wake up at 3:30 in the morning to meditate, because it was that important to me to tap into that spirit, to tap into that truth. 3:30 in the morning, I would wake up, meditate till 4:30, and then I would get ready to go to work for 5, right? And I was just dedicated to this. I'm not saying you have to be like me, but understand, tapping into more being will overall transform your entire life, right? So it's all about human being, not doing, right? Human being. So once again, let's say you're only working part-time now. Part-time is what, 4 or 5 hours a day? Well, let's see how many of those hours we can take and use for meditation. Now, here's another thing. Meditation is not just closing your eyes and sitting like a monk in the Himalayas. It can be just basically keeping your awareness focused within yourself, right? Like how many times on the job do we just have what we call dead time where we're not really doing anything? We could be using that time to just straight up meditate, eyes open, focus on our breathing, focus on our center within ourselves. And all of a sudden we just start seeing our lives transform because we're being and focused on being and not doing. Okay. I know this is a concept that's way out there, but I want you to give it a shot. If it's humanly possible, let's say you're like me, you're an actor and performer, and there's days where you have where you're not working, right? Try it out, right? Try it out. See what would happen if you meditated. 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. I'm not limiting you. Try it out. And then you worked 1 hour out of the day. See how your life transformed from that. I promise you it will. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been a pleasure, as always. If you have any questions, please write to me at shaung04@gmail.com. That comes directly to me. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Signing off wherever you are, whatever part of the country you're in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you for everything, all your support, listening in. Please share this podcast with anybody you feel like could benefit from it too as well. And we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Good night. Good morning. Good evening. Take care. Bye-bye.